Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Jujutsu Kaisen chapter 156. Before I get into this week's review, I of course have to mention my subscriber goal for 2021 hitting 5,000 by the end of the year. We are 1,442 away, so if you're already a fan of the channel and you're not subscribed, you might as well to help us reach that goal. You should also leave a comment and hit that like button to help boost us up in the algorithm. The next thing is my Patreon. Since it's the start of the video, it's time to give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Fuse, Neo, Dijon Redden, Anthony Chavez, Honey Mustard, Zach Rowitz, K-God, Chris Redfield, Scratch23, Moonshadow935, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Mac Campaign, and Wave of Manga. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at the start of videos or access to reviews for solo leveling in the Boxer, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. With that out of the way, let's get on with the review. The primary focus of this chapter is figuring out what exactly Kirara's curse technique is, how does it work, and that is thanks to, in large part, Megumi's very big brain. Megumi is one of the smarter characters in the series. At the very least, he seems to be the smartest of the main characters, and that really gets to shine in this chapter as he manages to figure out how Kirara's curse technique works without her explaining it to him. This is really nice, because in a lot of shonen series, normally when you have like a really complicated power, instead of having someone figure out how it works, you just have the person whose power it is explain it. Which I don't think is bad in and of itself. I know Jujutsu Kaisen has an in-universe explanation as to why people do that with binding vows and showing your hand, and I actually like that aspect of it, that there is actually a strategic benefit because of binding vows to revealing how your curse technique works. But I do appreciate that in this situation, when there was really no benefit to explaining how it worked, we had one of the main characters figure out how it worked on their own. So, time for that explanation. For starters, big old props to whoever those people on the Jujutsu Kaisen Discord server were who came up with the theory a few weeks ago that Kirara's curse technique has something to do with the parts of the Southern Cross constellation, that people are stuck in some way or another in the positions of the stars on the Southern Cross. Now, this is not exactly correct. It's a bit more complicated than that. We find out that Kirara's curse technique does not stop you from approaching her, and we do get a confirmation that she is a her, or Megumi calls her a her, so I'm going to be calling Kirara a she from here on out. You are still able to approach Kirara. It's not like Gojo's Infinity. It's not as good. It's somehow more complicated in a way, not because of math, but because of all of the various steps involved. So, something that is brought up with how Kirara's technique works is that the stars in a constellation are not all the same distance from Earth. There is depth. The way that we see them on sort of this quote-unquote flat surface is just how they look from our perspective. That's how the position looks from our perspective. When in reality, they are all different distances from the Earth. So, Kirara marks people and objects based on mostly cursed energy, with a certain star that is part of the constellation, and in order to get to Kirara or to some position that she has marked, such as the door to the monitoring room, you have to get to the next closest star. So, if you are marked with Imai, if you want to go any further, you have to go to Acrux, then you have to go to Mimosa, then you have to go to Ginan, then you have to go to Gakrux. So, it's beatable. It's a beatable technique. But if you can't figure out how it works, if you don't realize it has something to do with the Southern Cross, you're probably not going to beat it. Once again, not a strong technique, but a very troublesome technique. Kind of like Boogie Woogie. Once again, as many people have brought up, having a team-up between Kirara and Todo using Love Rendezvous and Boogie Woogie would be tremendous. That would be a sight to behold. I also really like how Megumi figures out what the technique is through this chapter. the whole chapter is just him investigating the various parts of the technique, seeing how it responds to rabbit escape, getting Panda's insight on how it seems to work, investigating the marks, looking for other marks in the area, how Kirara responds to them figuring out how the technique works. It's just, it has a lot of moving parts, or, well, you kind of see everything moving. It's a very, not static. It's a very lively chapter, I guess. It's just nice to see how everything just progresses from one step to the other as Megumi gets further along into figuring it out. I also like how it's confirmed to Megumi through asking the question out loud and Kirara expressing surprise at him figuring it out. Like, he wasn't certain. He was like, oh, is it the Southern Cross? And she was like, oh shit, he figured it out. So for Megumi, her reaction was confirmation. It's kind of a funny little thing there. And we get a few good moments in this chapter, like Kirara smashing this car, which I guess would have probably been through cursed energy manipulation. Unless... No, that seemed to have been cursed energy manipulation, and she did that to give it the same mark as Panda had, so then Panda had to try and stop himself from getting hit by this car that was being flung at him. Cool stuff like that. Also, Kirara is, of course, a third year, so it is not surprising in hindsight that she would be good enough at cursed energy enhancement to be able to smash the hood of a car by leaping on top of it. That's just kind of a neat detail. I feel like that shows a little bit of consistency in the power system. We know that most sorcerers should be able to do something like that to some extent. You know, at least good sorcerers should be able to manipulate cursed energy like that. So that's just a neat detail. And the end of this chapter is Megumi managing to capture Kirara, gets her into like an arm lock on the ground, and insists that she listen to what they have to say. So now we are going to have to try and persuade Kirara to listen to the truth. And that is going to be the key to getting Hikari to join. Because, of course, Hikari trusts Kirara. He doesn't trust the other people from Jujutsu Tech. So really, the only way that they're going to get through to Hikari is by going through the person that he will listen to. So I don't know how much it's going to take to persuade her. Maybe just explaining in detail everything that happened would be enough, because then if you had all of the details in place as to how exactly Gojo got sealed, you would be like, I guess it sounds possible. But then again, you also have the possible response of, it's fucking Satoru Gojo, no one can beat him. Because it's Gojo. As I said in many previous videos in the past, like a long time ago, when I would talk about Gojo more often, it's basically Gojo wins because he's Gojo. Fighting Gojo is a bad idea because he's Gojo. Because Gojo is an argument. And it's very possible that Kirara just straight up won't believe what Megumi says because it's Gojo. He wouldn't get captured because he's Gojo. So maybe Megumi will have to use more than just explaining what happened. He'll have to use logic, like, hey, do you really think shit would be getting crazy like this if Gojo was still around? I mean, come on. It's been several days now. Gojo would have cleaned this shit up in like an hour or less if he were still around. So maybe that'll convince her. And then we're going to have to see what is going on in this fight between Yuji and Hikari. The last chapter ended on the rooftop here, and then the chapter before that was in the monitoring room. So for the most part, for the last few chapters, it seems like we end off with whatever the next chapter is going to be starting with. So if that's anything to base this off, next week we're at least going to be starting off with Megumi trying to convince Kirara, and then maybe see more of Yuji fighting Hikari, or we'll just go to that, who knows. I'm kind of grasping at straws a little bit here. Because although this is kind of like an information-heavy chapter, it's not like a bunch of stuff happens in it. It's Megumi and Panda figure out how Kirara's curse technique works. That's the chapter. And all of the various steps involved make it pretty interesting, and a pretty good chapter on the whole. So, yeah, with that, that's pretty much all I have to say for this week's chapter. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews. Every week we get a new chapter. If you enjoy other series such as Record of Ragnarok, Chainsaw Man, Kengan Omega, and Bleach, I do videos in those series as well, so if you're interested in those, you should definitely check out my channel. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoyed the content I produce in this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description. And of course, if you want to help support me and the channel directly, also getting shoutouts at the start of videos, or access to reviews for Solo Leveling and The Boxer, you can always become a patron. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.